everybody, and welcome again to Nerd to the Third Power, your one-stop shop for all things nerdy and awesome. I am your host and master of ceremonies, Dr. Gonzo. With me, as always, this epic quest of awesomeness is our resident anime goddess, the Cat. Cat, how are you doing this week?
I am doing okay. It has been a weird couple of weeks for me, you guys. But I'm good. It's cold now. I don't like it.
Okay, well, before we get into why it's been a weird week, because that is a hell of a story, let's also introduce Mike. How are you doing this week?
Well, it has certainly been an interesting couple of weeks for me. If you've been following my social media at Birdman Dodd, let's just say it's been life-changing over literally the past 2 weeks. So mysteries that have been 39 years in the making have now been solved. So I'll talk about that in just a minute.
Did we finally find out who shot JR and where Al Capone's money is buried?
Not exactly, but I guess I'll just kind of tell it now very, very, very briefly. Long story short, I'm adopted. I knew who my real mother was at about age 12. Didn't know who my real dad was. My information had been lost to time. Anybody who knew wasn't talking or they'd forgotten. And my real mom never told me before she passed away. So through a series of DNA tests, I found my half-sister Katie this past fall, and we managed to hook up and talk during the fall there. And we actually met for the first time face-to-face. And we kept pursuing leads to could we find out who our dad was, because she didn't know our dad either, so we both had that in common. But we started talking to people through ancestry.ca, and we tracked down a fourth cousin, and we told them our story. They're like, yeah, I know who your dad is. We're like, wait, what, really? And because Katie is this genealogy expert, she put all the pieces together and be like, holy shit, I've been on the verge of knowing who this guy is for like 2 years now. So we talked to my dad's sister, and he's like, yeah, I talk to David every couple of weeks. That's my dad's name. And he put us in touch, and me and Katie talked with him for the first time last week. And it's a conversation I never thought I'd ever have with him and ever in my life. I never thought I knew who he was. And it turns out my dad's a professional skateboarder and a professional surfer who skated for Team Canada in the 80s.
Damn,
Wow.
that really is a mention. So yeah, round of applause. Congratulations,
Yeah,
man.
dude.
That's
Yeah, pretty fucking intense. And I actually asked him, like, well, I guess the athleticism skipped a generation.
oh.
God.
But yeah, like it was like really, really fantastic. So we talked for like an hour and a half on the phone last week. I'm going to call him again around Christmas. Providing that the pandemic slows up here in Canada, he has plans to come out east. He lives in Vancouver, and him and his wife are going to come out and see us sometime in the spring. So me and Katie are going to meet our dad for the first time in hopefully just a couple of months.
Oh my God, that's so wild.
I know, 39 years, and it just happens in a matter of like a week and a half. Everything comes together. It was astounding how quickly it happened.
Well, now I'm really happy for you, Birdman. Congratulations, and I also want to apologize to Kat, because I know there's no way that her story is going to be able to follow that up. So
No,
Kat,
not really. So my last few weeks have been just weird because obviously if you follow my social media, I got laid off right at the end of October. My company did a bunch of COVID-19 layoffs, and I lost my job. And I've been slowly destroying my sleep schedule ever since. And in the last couple of weeks, I've had a number of job interviews, and I got like a job offer, and then I got another job offer. And one of the job offers that I got that I did decide to accept was at a hospital. And bearing in mind, I've never worked in a hospital before. I haven't worked in anything even close to the medical field. I've worked in warehouses doing inventory control, but now I'm going to do inventory control for a hospital. And there's a lot of things involving working in a hospital, like getting shots and having a physical done and all this other stuff I didn't expect. So that's what I did. The morning of recording, I got 2 shots and had blood drawn. And like, I can't really lift my arms during this recording, so apologies if I don't put myself on mute when I'm supposed to, because my arms hurt. But anyway, it's been a wild week for me. Not in a life-changing way. Well, I guess getting a new job in a new field is life-changing, but my family dynamic has not shifted. But I will trade in my steel toes for scrubs.
Although if some of those surgeons wanted to get up and eat, you might want to hang on to those steel toes.
Yeah, I might need to kick some shins. I don't know. I'm told. Shh! Don't repeat this, but I'm told surgeons are, quote, grumpy.
All right. Well, gee, I wish I had something to round out the hat trick with some wild story, but I'm afraid that my life has been rather pedestrian for the last couple weeks. So anyway, so now that all that's out of the way, let's get right down into procedure. Our show tonight, we are discussing one of my favorite holiday films, and one that I'm surprised that we actually haven't talked about before. We're looking back at the original Home Alone, and talking about and basically giving our reactions to the film and seeing how well it holds up after, Christ, 30 years, isn't it? I think somewhere around there.
Yep, 1990.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Right on 30 years. Yeah. So this is going to be a lot of fun. And so, of course, there's procedure to follow. So we're going to begin, as always, with Ask a Geek. And we got some questions here. So let's see here now. Okay. First one here comes from Jeremy. And his question is to me. And his question is, what has been my favorite pickup for my collection over the last year? Ooh, that's a good question, because there's been a lot of really good ones. I think probably my favorite, because I didn't think that I would get a hold of one so soon, is the 3 Mario Kart Live home circuit sets that I kind of stumbled into over the last couple weeks. I've got 2 Marios and 1 Luigi. And so 2 I'm keeping sealed, and I opened up the 3rd one to play around with it, and that's a really neat little device. Mike, have you gotten a chance to get hands on with one of these things?
Not really. I mean, with my kind of wheelchair, there isn't a lot of room in my apartment to move around. We did get offered one for review, but since me and Alex live in fairly small apartments, we're like, we're good. It does look neat though.
It is. Like I like you, I live in a really tiny house. First off, this thing's a lot smaller than I thought it was going to be. Like I was expecting like a full size like RC car, but no, this thing's maybe like, 6 inches long and 3 wide. It's actually kind of tiny. But it's just so neat to play around with this and to actually see my house rendered on a Nintendo Switch through that AR camera. So that's probably my favorite pickup of the last year. Second place, falling very closely to the European Xenoblade Chronicles Collector's Edition with the vinyl soundtrack, which my struggle to get that into my collection was legendary. I finally had to rely on a mutual friend of mine and Katz, who lives out in England, to get it for me and to mail it out to me. But yeah, that was probably the most difficult pickup this year. So let's see here now. All right, next question here comes from Rick, and this is a question to me, but I'm going to open up to you, Mike, since I know you follow them more than I do. And his question is what do you think would win Game of the Year at the Game Awards?
I think the heavy contenders this year, I think Ghost of Tsushima stands a very strong possibility of taking it. Last of Us 2 also stands, once again, a very strong contender. I think the sleeper hit will probably be Hades, because I hear a lot of people talking about it. I've got no real interest in it. I've got no horse in this race. Let me see. I mean, my game of the year is Persona 5 Royal, but whatever. If I had to pick,
I still technically call that cheating, because that's technically an updated re-release of a 2017 game.
Yeah, but if I really wanted to split hairs like you, that would be what I'd say. If I had to say with a wholly new game, I might say Final Fantasy VII Remake. Just because of the music, the sound direction in that game, the art direction's phenomenal, fantastic voice performances all around. It generally really, really impressed me. Although another game that surprised the ever-living hell out of me because of how good it is and how simple it is, Fall Guys. That game, I hope, wins some awards. It definitely deserves it. I'm really, really looking forward to seeing what happens with that community as it moves forward. I'm probably going to stream some of that game over the holidays on my PlayStation 5. So yeah, I hope that does. I know Among Us is going to do some stuff there too, so I hope that does well, because I know Kat, you play that, I think.
I do. I play a game. It's so strange.
I want to play this because I don't know what it is, but I bought it anyway. I'm thinking, well, Kat plays it, so it's got to be somewhat fun. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
I've been told Among Us would be right up my alley because and this is directly quote a very dear friend of mine. He says to be right up my alley because quote I am the biggest asshole that he knows, and Among Us is just made for that sort of person.
Yes, literally, you guys haven't played this, and I have. This is so strange. Okay, so I have a Discord server that anyone can join. If you want the link for it, you just come in and join, and people play pretty regularly, even if I'm not there. It's just a group of people who just want to play, and they play pretty much every night. So if you guys want to play, we could totally play together. It would be really fun for the three of us to do it, because we've known each other for so long.
I suppose because like that's the reason why I don't play online games is because I just don't play online games in general because I had bad experience with Xbox Live back in the day, so it just soured me on the whole concept. But I don't know if it's a group of people that I actually know. I don't know, maybe I'll pick it up and give it a shot. And anyway, he's got a secondary question which Mike has sort of already answered, and that's what would our personal game of the year's been. So since Mike's already given his, I'll give mine. Gold medal goes to Ghost of Tsushima. I absolutely love that game. I think it's one of the most beautiful games in terms of presentation I've ever played, and I love the story, love the gameplay, and feudal Japan is it's not a setting that you really see explored very much in games, and to be able to actually move around in that time period and explore it was really fascinating to me because I've always had kind of a passing fascination with Japanese history, which is a side effect of my brief time as an anime nut, which Kat is partially responsible for. But anyway, moving on.
I'm an influencer.
Yep. Second place, I would have to say, would go to second place. Damn, that's a good. What's a good second place? I'd say probably second place goes to the Final Fantasy VII remake. Because that's another one that I've had a lot of fun with. Although I haven't finished yet, I need to go back and finish it. And then, then this is going to be me proving that I'm a total hypocrite. Honorable mention goes to Persona 5 Royal. I said it was cheating. I didn't say I wasn't going to do it. But I justify it by saying that I didn't actually play Persona 5 when it first came out in 2017. So consider me naming Royal as an honorable mention my penance for sleeping on such an awesome game. So let's see. Okay, and another question here. Let's see if we got one here for you, Kat. Let's see. Okay, all right. Here's one, and this one comes from Eric, and his question is: what is the best experience you've ever had at an anime con?
Oh boy, the best experience I've ever had at an anime con. Okay. I've had a lot of good, amazing experiences at an anime con, but literally the first thing that popped into my head, which is a story I'm certain I've probably told on this show at least 3 times. But when I was still quite young, not like a small child, but still a teenager, probably 7 to 16. Me and my friends were doing a cosplay group from Rurouni Kenshin. This was when I still went to conventions for fun and didn't work them, which ruined my ability to have fun at conventions unless I'm working. So I was 16, was with a group of friends who were cosplaying from Rurouni Kenshin. We were playing all the bad guys, the Jupongatana from the 2nd season. And the leader of the bad guys is this dude called Shishio. And we didn't have one. We had like 2 or 3 bad guys, and we managed to run into, so there was like me and my friend, and we were playing 2 of the bad guys, and then we came across another person cosplaying from the Jupongatana, and we're like, hi, we're your new best friends, we're hanging out all weekend. And then we came across another person cosplaying from the Jupongatana, and we're like, hi, you're our friend now, come hang out with us all weekend. And we were told, hey, have you seen that Shishio cosplayer? So we spent like half of a day as we were just walking around doing convention stuff going, like, shit, where is this Shishio cosplayer? We made little signs that say, like, looking for Master Shishio. And eventually we found the Shishio cosplayer, like, just out in someplace getting his picture taken. And he saw us and screamed and came up and just hugged us and had the best time. We did a bunch of photos together. We hung out for the rest of the weekend, and this guy became a friend of ours. And it was just really, really special that it's something that really only can happen at a con, where you see somebody wearing the same costume as you or a costume from the same thing as you, and then you immediately form a bond that you would otherwise not have had just meeting that person on the street. And then you hang out with him at Suncoast Video where he worked.
All right. Yeah, I think you have told that story.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. Every time somebody's like, what's your best memory? I'm like, it's that one, because of that pure existential, just utter joy of immediately meeting people and instantly becoming their best friends. And then like we had friendships that from just these cosplays that lasted for like years and years afterwards.
Okay. And he's got a second question that you kind of already touched on, but his question is, how has working anime cons affected your ability to enjoy cons as a guest?
Ruined it completely. I don't have fun at cons anymore if I'm just attending. It's a hyper awareness thing, and I've heard a lot of my fellow like con runners have this same problem, where you're just hyper aware of situations and you kind of like look and you know something's wrong, but you have no ability to say anything or do anything about it except to tell somebody on staff. Like the number of times I have yelled "no running" at a convention that I do not work at is horrific. I'm like a teacher now because I have to yell "no running" in the halls constantly. But it's also like for me, I go with this expectation of having something to do at every moment. And if I don't have something to do at every moment, I get bored. So like, especially with the big Comic-Cons like Wizard World and stuff, which are the last several conventions that I've been to that I haven't worked. And I go there for like the autographs and stuff like that, because I'm a simp. But anyway, so I'll go there, and as soon as I like walk through the dealer's room once, get the autographs I want to get, and then I have nothing to do because I don't have, like I'm not as interested as I used to be in going to panels or anything like that. Obviously, if it's like the Lord of the Rings cast, I'm going to go to that panel. But that's, an hour out of a long day that is entertaining. And then what do I do for the rest of the day? There's only so much that you can just walk around in circles. And I'm so very used to having stuff to do constantly. I'm used to being in like a hyperactive brain space where I don't really need to eat or sleep for 3 days and I can just survive on stress. And I consume that stress and then I crash really hard afterwards. So when I go to conventions, especially if it was an anime convention, I just don't know what to do with myself. And then I just get bored and I just want to be in charge of something. I see a guest and I'm like, hey, can I get that guy a bottle of water, please? Please let me go run and get that guy a bottle of water.
I just want to be included.
It's real bad. Oh, God. So the lesson is don't ever work for a convention. Especially don't start your own convention. And don't be a director level on a convention. A lot of people who like volunteer and stuff still have normal convention experiences. Once you've been like higher up or a director or something like that, it's ruined. The whole thing. It's not like, oh, now it's horrible to do it. It's just now that you walk into a convention and you have a completely different mindset.
Because you know how the sausage is made.
Exactly. So it's just very, very different. I say ruined as joke, but like really, it's just a completely different experience. And I still enjoy conventions, but I just can't go as an attendee. I just get so bored.
All right. Okay. Well, that is all the time that we have for Ask a Geek this week. Thank you as always for sending them in. As always, you can send them to us through the email at drgonzo@nerdofthethirdpower.com. Love getting your questions. Love reading them. So go ahead and send your questions in and you just might get yours read on the air. And so with that, we are now in the throes of the holiday season. That rapturous time, to me at least, because I actually enjoy Christmas. I guess I'm one of the few people my age group who actually does. We thought that it would be fun to have a couple of holiday-themed episodes, and for the first one, we decided that we would discuss a Christmas film, and we decided to do something that hasn't really been talked about a lot, because everybody talks about A Christmas Story or It's a Wonderful Life or one of the many Grinch movies that are out there. But we decided to talk about something a little older and a little, well, A Christmas Story is old as shit, but that's neither here nor there. Ignore me. Anyway, moving on. To talk about something from a film from our childhoods, and something that we haven't seen in a while, and that's the original Home Alone, which this year marks its 30th anniversary. You said, Mike?
I think so. I think this came out in 1990 or 91. It was one or the other.
Yeah, and so we thought it'd be fun to look at this film and see how it holds up, not just as a film itself, but also as a Christmas movie. So this is gonna be a fun one, because I actually I really loved this film as a kid, and I can't remember ever seeing it as an adult. So this is my first time looking at it with adult eyes. And Mike, I think this was your idea actually to do this film.
Yeah, Home Alone and me have a very long history together. I saw this in theaters when it was in its original theatrical run. I got the VHS for Christmas. At some point I got it. I watched it a lot. And when I was in the hospital for my amputation back in 2017 on the AMC channel, this played constantly. So I became intimately familiar with this movie, so much so I know its sleeping patterns. And I just became more in love with it. And it's actually kind of funny. When I was in the hospital dealing with something obviously very life-changing and very, very, very drastic, I really hated Christmas before this, because I've had a number of really bad Christmases in my probably last 15 years. But after the amputation, things kind of changed with me, and I decided, you know what? I could have died on November 27th. I could have been taken out of this world, game over, the end. And seeing Christmas movies and experiencing Christmas again with my family kind of took on a different vibe and feel with it. And my wife sat with me in ICU when I was in the Guelph General Hospital, and we watched Home Alone and Home Alone 2 back to back more than a few times, because they were always on that channel. And it just became one of my favorite Christmas movies again after decades long absence. In fact, I just bought it from the Disney Movie Club on 4K on my Xbox Series X, which looks fantastic, by the way. And it's just something I'm glad that I'm coming back to. There's a wealth of information available for it. We're not really going to touch it upon this in this show, but if there's like a documentary on Netflix about it, there is stuff on YouTube you can look up about it. It's a really fascinating production, and I'm glad we're talking about it, because I think it is one of the classic movies. I don't know whether it's been preserved in the Library of Congress, but I might argue that it does deserve a spot in there.
Speaking of the documentaries I mentioned, there's actually a funny side note to this. When we came up with the idea to talk about this show, I very specifically reached out to you, Mike, and gave you a very specific set of instructions. Do you remember what those were?
Yeah, just don't talk about it. So that's all I said. Just go watch them if you want to check out the supplemental stuff to it.
No, the instructions were to watch the movie, because the thing is, I know you, and I know that you do this because I'm the same way. You would, if you got started watching the documentaries and making stuff, you fall down this rabbit hole of just absorbing all this information, and you'd forget to actually watch the movie.
Yeah,
I had to give you specific instructions to watch the movie. But anyway, yes. So this has been, so it's been really interesting to go back and see this film again. So let's just start with our general thoughts on the film. Of course, everybody knows what the plot is. Macaulay Culkin stars a kid who wishes his family would disappear, and then wakes up the next morning to find it's actually happened, and he's left home alone and has to defend his home from a pair of burglars. It's a very simple plot for this film, but let's just start breaking down to start talking with our general thoughts. So, Kat, let's start with you. What are your general thoughts on Home Alone 1?
Oh man, Home Alone is okay. So it's been a while since I've watched it, but it's one of those things where I catch it every couple of years on TV, and I don't have cable, so it's been quite a while. But it is both better and worse than I remember. Because obviously, as a kid, We'd all love to have been trapped home alone. We all wanted this. We all wanted to just eat dinners of mac and cheese pizzas without our parents around. We all wanted this. We wanted it. But there's a lot of stuff that when I look back, I go, oh God, what a product of its time. So again, both better and worse than I remember. There's a lot of parts of it where I'm like, oh, that still holds up pretty well. There's other parts of it that made me go, no, not so much. And I'm happy to dig into them once we go further into it.
Okay. Birdman, what about you? General thoughts on Home Alone?
I think it's a wonderfully fun movie, and it's definitely a product of its time, because this is one of those things where you're like, you could solve this movie with a text message or a cell phone or even a WhatsApp or a TikTok. This movie would not be hard to solve with like social media. Plus, can you imagine if Kevin got a hold of a manual for guerrilla warfare from Reddit? So this could be really deadly. Yeah, I find this movie fun. And like Kat said, we've all wanted to be this 8-year-old terror. And it's fun, it's fantastic, it's whimsical, it's light, it's got enough adult humor that it kind of sticks with you, and great performances by the entire cast. There's very rarely a bad person, although some questionable child abuse. Other than that, great.
Okay, well, like I have a problem I already mentioned. I love seeing this movie again, and I wanna kind of touch upon something that you guys both kind of mentioned about, we've all wanted to be home alone. One of the things I really like about this film, and I guess this is where we'll kind of start segueing and talking about the story, is how this isn't just a kids movie; it's actually a movie about kids. It's a movie that is told from a kid's perspective, and I feel like we don't see films like that anymore. Like, I can't remember the last film of that type to come out, but like, I remember when I was growing up, we had movies like Home Alone, The Sandlot, Blank Check, Snow Day, Harriet the Spy, films that told the story from a kid's perspective. And watching this movie really highlighted to me how rare those films are nowadays, because the thing that I think that we forget as we grow up is that kids see the world in a very different way than adults do. Like, for example, the scene in the basement where Kevin goes down to do the laundry and he gets frightened by the scary furnace. We as adults, we kind of look at that and go, oh, he's, just being silly. But, to a kid, who hasn't been afraid of, the scary, noisy appliance in the basement or the weird old guy next door? It's so rare nowadays to see films actually get down on a kid's level. Not like talking down to kids, but actually like telling the story from their perspective, from their side of things. I feel like a lot of kids' movies nowadays that are made, they're still really telling their stories from an adult's point of view, and not necessarily from a kid's. And it was really it was a real nostalgic trip to go back and actually see a movie not just tell the story from a kid's level, but also do it well. So yeah. So what did you guys think of the story of this film? Now that I've given my thoughts.
Again, a product of its time, because it relies heavily upon the right set of circumstances to set up the right set of events. Because without the telephone line being cut off and every family suspiciously being absent on Kevin's street to go check on him, he's left home alone. But then again, Kevin's only 8 years old and is very irresponsible for a second grader. But still, it's got a fun story that's easy to follow. You got clear good guys, clear bad guys, enough side characters that are funny without being obnoxious. I found out the part of Uncle Frank was supposed to be Kelsey Grammer, and that would have been interesting, seeing Frasier yell at, Macaulay Culkin. But yeah, like storyline wise, sure, there's some plot holes, but they're easily forgivable because the story never takes you out of it. You're never throwing up the what the fuck hands. You're like, oh, that's kind of funny. It flows with you. It takes you on a fun ride over the course of its hour and a half runtime.
Okay, Kat, what about you? Thoughts on the story?
Yeah, I think the story is just really nice. It very much feels like a 90s story where it's very simple. It's not overcomplicated because, as we know, every movie made today is really, really overly complicated for no reason. So it doesn't have too many complex elements or anything like that. It's like you said, it's a story from a kid's perspective. And it's nice. It has just the right amount of build, I guess. It starts off, okay, we see where the plot is going, but then it has that really touching moment with a nice old man, and everybody learns a lesson. And it's actually like it has character development in it for a movie that is ostensibly about like beating up two men. So it's just a charming little story. It's fun. It's just so simple, and honestly, isn't that what we want during especially the 2020 holidays? Is just something nice and simple. A little cathartic, if nothing else.
Okay, so what were some standout moments out of the story for you guys?
The obviously elaborate trap sequence at the end, because Kevin doesn't have long to put this set of traps together, which I think in the movie's time, I think he has less than 2 hours to set up like paint traps, to set up the traps on the stairs, that metal thing that goes on the door to superheat the doorstep, the blowtorch gag. Like, he's pretty fucking creative. Like, Kevin would be a master carpenter, or clearly, like I said, he's read a book on guerrilla warfare, because he's ready. And there's a great video on YouTube where it's like, Harry and Marv are dead. I heavily recommend you watch that video. But yeah, it's so good. But yeah, there's just like so many little things about that sequence that stand out. Also, one sequence, I fucking love this, because there's a movie within a movie in this, and it's called Angels with Filthy Souls, where he's eating these Dorito-like things, and he's eating like this ridiculous chocolate sundae. And it's this gangster movie. Now, that movie doesn't exist. And I love that little sequence. The fact that that movie scares Kevin when the gangster guns down the other guy's snakes. He's like, "Keep the change, you filthy animal." That gets quoted between me and my friends so often, it is criminal. Like, there's just so many little moments from this movie that stand out. Like, do you guys probably remember, like, when Kevin does the whole shaving scene and he slaps his face and does the everybody did that for like a winter or two when we were younger. You couldn't escape it. So it's all these little scenes that stick in pop culture. And like, when you think of a movie involving traps, you automatically think this movie. So it's like, it's gone down in pop culture. It's gone in cinema as one of these very iconic children's movies. And also, I was just kind of thinking about this, Gonzo. You know how you were mentioning aren't a lot of kids movies told from a kid's perspective? The only movie I can think of in recent memory, it came out last year. It starred John Cena and Jordan Peele and like a wrestler called Tyler Mane. It was from Nickelodeon Pictures, and it was called Playing with Fire, where John Cena's a firefighter. And that's about the closest I can possibly think. Not the same movie with like traps and shit, but told from a kid's perspective. So any studio that does this right might be Nickelodeon movies that isn't like, I don't know, whatever those movies are. But yeah, you don't get a lot of these anymore. Maybe on Disney Plus, you could maybe say the Kim Possible movie, but maybe, I don't know. I'm grasping there at straws. Anyway, sidebar. I'm out. Tapping in.
For me, there was a couple of standout moments. I will go into at least two of them. Okay, so during the big trap sequence, and Birdman, you said guerrilla warfare. I say Kevin McAllister will make the greatest escape room in the entire history of the world. That's his future career, is making escape rooms. In the big trap sequence, of all of the different traps that go on, it's just the one where the big spider is crawling on one of their faces. And which one is it? Marv?
Marv, yeah.
Yeah. and he starts screaming, and the scream that he makes with the spider on his face is just one of my favorite screams in all of cinema. Wilhelm, get out of here. That scream, the spider on the face scream, is the scream I think about. But honestly, one of my very, very favorite sequences in the whole thing is right at the beginning when the other one, not Marv, Harry is dressed up as a cop. He's standing in like the foyer of this mega house, trying to ask every person that's passing by trying to figure out who owns the house so he can talk to them, so he can figure out what all the plans are. And he just keeps like talking to all these kids and getting the same answer. Are your parents home? Yes, but they don't live here. And that scene is so funny because of like the comedic pacing of that scene. And then the pizza delivery guy shows up, and then you have these two people just standing there waiting for anyone to talk to them. Man, I just love that scene. It's like the pacing of it is really fun. And I think it's such an underappreciated scene in that film. I love that scene. And then I guess my other favorite scene is the scene in the church where Kevin is talking to the scary man next door. And it's just such a pretty scene because it's one of the only scenes in that film with any real depth, because let's face it, this is mostly a movie about beating up people and having a great time without your family there, which is what we really wanted as kids. And this scene is really, really lovely. And it feels like that's what rounds it up as a nice family film with a moral that doesn't beat you over the head, but is just nice. So nice they did it twice and put that exact same thing into the second film.
Twice? Hell, they did it 5 times.
Well, I haven't seen the other ones because as far as I'm concerned, they don't exist.
And you are the richer for it.
Yes, I know. So anyway, I love that scene when he's talking to the old man. I don't know why, but I feel like we've all known an old man like that. The neighbor, whatever his name was, I can't think of it off the top.
Yeah.
Yes. Old man Marley. Yeah. I feel like every neighborhood has a rumor like that. Everybody has something like that, and like getting a nice resolution to his story at the end was really quite sweet. And the fact that he comes in and saves the day at the end was really quite nice. So it's just a nice scene in an otherwise fun and yet a little bit brutal film.
Okay. Alrighty. So I guess that brings us now into discussing the cast of this film, which, as Mike has already said, not a bad one in the bunch. So let's talk about the cast. What were some standout casting choices in this film to you guys?
Catherine O'Hara as Kevin's mother, or Lana Lang from Superman 3, if I'm not mistaken. So first off, Kevin's mom is hot. No apologies. And such comedic timing from her. Like she knows exactly how to accentuate her acting when she's on the plane and screams Kevin, when she's talking down to him. It's that great condescending tone. It's just, she's so perfect. And I think she's in that show Schitt's Creek, if I'm not mistaken. So she's obviously got the comedy chops to do this. And I'm just so amazed with her chemistry with everybody on screen in this movie. Even the person who plays her husband, John something, I can't remember his name. Great parents to Kevin, at least in concept, but again, believable chemistry. Another great, I don't have the actor's name in front of me, but the person who plays Buzz, the older brother.
That would be Devin Rattray.
Yeah, if asshole had a face, it would be him. This guy was the stereotypical bully, prick older brother that was over the top, but suited the part. And I just thought his thing was great, especially when he delivers the line like, I wouldn't let you sleep in my room if you were growing on my ass. It's the way that he says ass that I just kills me. But yeah, there's just, again, a lot of the side characters in this, great chemistry. Also, Joe Pesci as Harry, underappreciated. Like, really, that guy has such range to his like acting. Like, I love him. Like, my favorite movie of his is Goodfellas. This is probably my second favorite of his. And then another movie
And-
he did in the 90s was called The Super. I love too.
And what's interesting about Joe Pesci is, like, he is, he's basically playing the same character that he always played, which is the New York mobster type. But it fits so well as Harry the burglar, and like he's probably my favorite actor in this whole movie. And I love just every time he gets the business end of something, just like that anguish that angry muttering that he just devolves into. The rumor I heard was that because he's such a foul mouthed guy, that there was a swear jar on the set, and Pesci filled it in like a day.
I believe it.
I do too.
So, but he's probably my favorite actor in this movie. Daniel Stern playing Marv coming a very close second. He just plays that perfect blend of menacing simpleton. Like you see in his performance, this is a guy who could do some real damage if he put his mind to it, but he's not. He's a few fries short of a Happy Meal upstairs. And I love both of their performances in this film. So, Kat, what about you? Standout actors.
Other than okay, of course Macaulay Culkin was amazing in this film. Not that this film needed particularly great acting or anything like that, but just the way that he talks and narrates and everything is it's very charming. He was a child at the time, and it's just fun to watch. And considering he had to literally carry the entire film, I thought it's quite good. But you know who I love is John Candy.
Yes.
We all love John Candy. You can't dislike John Candy. He's just so charming in this film. And it's not a big role by any means. I don't know that he has more than 5 minutes total of screen time, but it's like every time somebody says John Candy, this is the role that I picture, because it's him at his just most
charming dad-like,
down to earth, just like a normal funny guy. And if I'm not mistaken, isn't he one of the Second City guys?
Yep.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And so's Catherine O'Hara, incidentally.
Yeah, so I think I looked, and there was a lot of the adults in this film, side characters and stuff, were all Second City actors or comedians and stuff. And it makes sense of, okay, that's why this movie is all these adult actors are so funny and have such good comedic timings, because a lot of them are actually comedians that have all worked together in Second City for a long time. But yeah, I just love John Candy in that role. He's just fun. Yeah. I mean, I also love Catherine O'Hara in this film. She's absolutely amazing in this. Her just franticness, if that's the right word. Her exasperation, when she's on the phone and she's on hold and she's just somebody pick up. I do that all the time. That's the mannerism I picked up, is just being on hold and then screaming, somebody pick up.
Oh yes, okay. So that's the cast. So let's talk about the presentation of this film. What did you think about how this film presented itself? So Mike, let's start with you on this one.
Okay, so to talk about the home video releases of this, there have been a number of ones over the years, but the most recent one is the Disney 4K exclusive. I don't know whether it's exclusive, but either way, you can pick this movie up in 4K. This looks great in 4K, and it's got a really nice soundtrack to it too. I think, was it John Williams who did the score for this?
It was John Williams, and in a case of it was almost like literally a story. I was they're talking and joking around, oh, wouldn't it be great if John Williams did the score for this little dinky little indie film that maybe has an $8 million budget?
Yeah, it's such a great score, such great music that goes throughout it. It never overstays its welcome. It sets the tone. And I really like how it establishes mood and atmosphere. And I don't know, it's just a really, really good score. Plus the Home Alone score, I would argue, is fairly iconic. You know what it is within about 30 seconds of hearing it. I mean, it's not like, oh, that's the Harry Potter score. That's Star Wars recognizable level. But any kid from the 90s and 2000s, you know what this is almost immediately. So yeah, like it looks great. The movie shot really well. Almost every home video presentation has looked really good. I mean, I don't know, maybe not the 480 videos from the 90s, but whatever. Yeah, overall, I'm very impressed with this movie. Overall, I mean, nothing. Actually, no. One thing that stands out to me, and I love this sound effect because I'm that sound nerd. When Kevin goes into the basement and runs into his furnace, and you hear it go, and it roars at him, and when it hits, the steel opens and it slams shut again. The impact of that steel, I love that sound effect. Don't know why. It's just always stuck with me as just being, that is how steel sounds, and I love it.
I want to leap off something that you said about the score. And first off, thank you for being the first one to bring up the score, because Kat always makes fun of me that I'm the only person who notices the music.
There's a lot of stuff going on in films, but I was going to talk about John Williams in this one.
But one of the things that I really love about the music in this film, that one of the things that always irritates me about Christmas films is they think that Christmas music is just jingle bells. It's just people jangling bells throughout the whole thing, and I love that Williams doesn't do that here. I actually can't think of a single piece in this film that actually has jingle bells in them, and I love that Williams actually got creative and made a score that was Christmassy and holiday themed without just jangling a bunch of bells throughout the whole thing. I'm sorry, Kat, you were gonna say?
The thing I was gonna say about John Williams is, as an adult, having watched a lot of movies in between the last time I watched Home Alone, the John Williams like theme for this is almost the exact same as Hedwig's theme in Harry Potter. That's all I wanted to say about it, because I just kept going, this is Harry Potter music. This is Harry Potter music. It's just Hedwig's theme. It's almost the same.
Okay, so what else about the presentation stood out to you?
God, can we talk about the house? Like the set piece of the house?
Oh yeah, the house is impossibly furnished and impossibly big on the inside, which is wonderful.
Yeah, it's so gorgeous on the outside. Like every time I think about like a Christmas movie where I want to have like a Christmas movie setting, I think about that big beautiful house with just the right amount of snow on the ground, but the roads are completely clear inexplicably. Like that's a real thing that happens. and everything is so immaculately decorated, and you're like, what did his family do for a living that they can afford this house? It's so beautiful.
And then they randomly all take off the France. Actually, I sat down with like Blair at one point. Blair is my wife, for those of you that don't know. We sat down and we figured out the approximate cost of their trip to France. Let me tell you, Kevin's dad better be a doctor or a lawyer. Same with her mom or his mom, because holy shit, it's a lot. But yeah, the house is gorgeous, and yeah, there's some really cool things about this house that I love too. Just the fact that it has a fully furnished attic that looks awesome, and every child wanted that attic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just so big, and it made for a lot of varied set pieces, you know, between the room where he's watching the movie the first time and the dining room and putting up the trees, and there's just so much beautiful decor going on. Like it's just a great set piece all over. The basement being so varied from the rest of the house because it holds a monstrosity, and the rest of the house is beautifully furnished. But yeah, it's a gorgeous house. We all obviously wanted to live in that house and have full run of that house and fill that house with traps and fight off burglars.
All right. Well, yeah. So that's the presentation film, and as interesting and entertaining as the film itself is, there's also a lot of interesting behind the scenes stuff too. So Birdman, this is where I'm going to take the collar off and just turn you loose, because I know that you've just got like a wealth of knowledge about this film's production that you're just waiting to share.
Okay, so the house, that's a soundstage. Almost everything on the inside was built inside a soundstage, and the last shot at the end of the movie where like it starts to snow, if I'm remembering this right, that shot became so remarkably hard to get because they were packing up to leave, and they're like, are we going to have to ship in fake snow? I think. And it started to snow, and the director's like, get people on the phone now. Get people down here now. We got to be shooting now. And it all came together super, super quick. And one of the neat things, I just found this factoid out recently, where Kevin draws that big battle plan map. Macaulay Culkin actually drew that,
Nice.
which I found. Yeah, that's really cool. I'm thinking that's really freaking creative. One of the things where Marv steps on all the ornaments, those are sugar. So he fortunately didn't have to pierce his foot with those things, although you reasonably could. The scenes where he's walking around barefoot, he pulls a Die Hard and is wearing the booties that look like feet, which is I think kind of cool. I actually want to go back and watch it again in 4K to see if I can spot the scenes where he's wearing the feet booties, because I'd love to get a pair of those and just pretend that I'm a hobbit with only one leg. Sidebar. But anyway.
So then wouldn't you be called a hobbit?
Yes, I am a hobbit. Oh, it's evil. But yeah, there's just so many cool things about, like, I think they built the house in like a gymnasium in a school somewhere, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And it's just an amazing piece of carpentry, so they could move stuff around to get whatever shots they wanted. And everybody was ready to go whenever they needed things. And just, it works so well. John Candy, as we mentioned kind of previously, only had enough time to work on this movie for a day. They shot his scenes remarkably quickly. He was really, really good about it. Really good feedback with all the writers, the producers, and the directors. And
He actually made less on this film than the guy who played the pizza guy.
yeah, I mean, John Candy wanted to help out people. He wanted to do something fun, and he did. And for a cameo, he's one of the more memorable characters in it as the Polka King, who's really big in Sheboygan. Like, there's just little things like that really make this movie kind of flourish, because the right care, the right production team, the right production designers, art direction was all working on all cylinders. I think if you look in the background, I think it's in Buzz's room. You see an Ice-T poster when he was at his hype. You also, interesting factoid, I didn't realize this. One of the only rooms we don't see in the McAllister house, you don't see Kevin's room. And that never dawned on me until I was watching it the other night. I'm thinking, that is kind of weird. Yeah, say you'd think you'd see Kevin's room, because I can imagine that being ripe for product placement, because that would have been really cool just to see what toys they would have got. But
No, they say that for the second film with that Talk Boy thing.
Oh my god, and I got one of those the second it was available, and I abused the shit out of it.
I'll
That
tell you
was
something that
terrible.
I didn't know about this movie until I watched the Movies That Made Us documentary on it. This is a John Hughes film.
Yep.
I had no idea, like that this was one of his movies. That granted, I'm not such a film buff that I have a very clear understanding of what a quote unquote John Hughes movie means. But I just thought that was an interesting, neat little factoid. This was done by the same guy who did The Breakfast Club.
Like, John Hughes has he can write almost any style when it comes to writing quirky characters and quirky kind of dialogue. I mean, obviously, Breakfast Club and Pretty in Pink, and some of his lesser known films like Year One, I think he did, and Curly Sue, obviously less commercially successful, but you think of stuff like 16 Candles being one of his bigger successes, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, people often forget that, Home Alone. And I think the writing and the snappy dialogue really makes it stand out. And for a child actor too, for Macaulay Culkin to take so naturally to his lines too, speaks to the strength of the screenplay for this. Because if it's not on the page, it's not on the screen, but you have to have the right people to put that material on the screen. And casting for this movie, like I said, as we've discussed previously, was perfect. You could not have cast this role any other way. Although, like I mentioned earlier, it would have been interesting seeing Kelsey Grammer as Uncle Frank.
It would have been interesting, but you also know that he would have gotten an 11-season spinoff on just his own.
I would watch the Uncle Frank show, which weirdly enough, he's still alive.
All right.
He's not the only cast member who's still alive. Or one of the other cast members who's passed away from this movie is Kevin's dad. Passed away a couple of years ago. I think he died of I think it was either cancer or pneumonia. He passed away, and I think Old Man Marley survived until I want to say the early to late 2000s. Like, he lived a long time.
He was really old during that movie.
Yeah,
Like,
he was like ancient.
yes.
Another fun little bit of trivia
He
is
passed away in 2011 at the age of 87.
yeah, like he was old back then. Like, he was like fucking ancient. So another fun little bit of trivia is Daniel Stern, who plays Marv, was also the voice of Dilbert in the Dilbert animated series, and his son is something in the U.S. I think he's a senator or something in California. He's somebody of prominence. So if you ever piss off somebody in the California government, Marv and the Wet Bandits are going to come and get you. So sidebar.
Don't threaten me with a good time.
All right. But anyway, we're kind of running close to the end of the show, so let's start wrapping things up by giving our final thoughts on this film. So, Kat, let's start with you. Final thoughts on Home Alone.
It's a good nostalgia-filled film. It's one of those movies from the 90s where, again, it was a product of its time. It could only work in that particular. It wouldn't work nowadays. You'd have to really, really jimmy things in order to get that sort of plot to work nowadays. I really wish there had been maybe 2 less scenes of Kevin McAllister screaming directly into the camera, but otherwise, man, it's just a fun little film. Watch it for Christmas. It's fine. It's cute. It's fun. It's a wish fulfillment that we all had when we were 8 years old.
All right, Mike, final thoughts on Home Alone?
Thoughts on Home Alone. I think it's a fantastic holiday movie. I do think it is essential viewing. It's a movie you can safely show to most children, I think, because believe me, we live in a much more violent world now. And like I said, it's a really cool time capsule of that part of our society when the world didn't seem so dangerous, when cartoony villains existed and couldn't snap you out of existence with a magic glove. So yeah, it's fun, and I really recommend the Disney 4K release if you're going to get it. And there are Home Alone toys if you can find them, and they are strange.
Alrighty. Well, like I said, this was a nostalgic trip for me. Take me back to my childhood, to the age of the kid empowerment films, which I'd really like to see more of, because, you know, I don't know. I think the reason why those films spoke to me as a kid is because, like I said, they were told from a kid's perspective, and they really got down on my level and showed me the world, you know, as I saw it as a kid. And I feel like kids movie makers nowadays have kind of forgotten how to do that. But I absolutely love this film. It's seeing it now as an adult, it's definitely going on my list of must-watch Christmas movies, alongside Muppet Christmas Carol and the Jim Carrey Grinch movie. Fight me, I will stand that movie until the day I die. So yeah, this has definitely been a great movie to see again. So thank you, Mike, for suggesting it, and thank you to our listeners for tuning in. As always, we love having you here. We love entertaining you, and we will see you guys next time. As always, I'm Dr. Gonzo.
I'm the cat.
Pick up, Mike.
We'll see you next time. Taka, play us out.